Um, just sort of thinking now, if you like, in terms of the structure of how one approaches reward in a public service setting. Could you talk about what do you think are the considerations when approaching reward policy in terms of reward structure and processes to be effective in the public services?
Yeah, I think it's really important to consider total reward. So we have in public service uh, a number of things that sit outside basic pay in terms of that feed into the total reward. So quite often you will have opportunities to learn and develop, opportunities for flexible working, all of the things that make up that reward package in terms of being an attractive place to work. So it might not be all of the things that you might see in other organizations, but I think what's really so important to understand that whole package, and pensions, as we've discussed earlier, it is something that's really important, that it's about saying this is how you're rewarded as an employee at this organization, and it is that total package rather than just looking at base pay. The other part is we need to think about motivation. So why do people come into public service? Um, Quite frankly, it's not always about, it does have the best pay terms and conditions, but actually what's the driver? Because quite often people want to make things better. They want to come into public service because they can see that there is an opportunity to change, to make things better and progress. So what does that learning look like? How do people come out of the one organization with a learning set that they can use and utilize or move elsewhere? So I think what's really important is to focus on that whole package.
Yeah. I mean, that's really helpful. I think that you've set the scene for how one approaches reward. We've looked at some of the unique challenges, scrutiny obviously being one, the other one maybe lack of immediate understanding and being able, therefore, effectively to communicate value in areas that people might not readily recognize. And then we've been talking about getting things done, working through our colleagues, managers, in particular the managers at the front line. What's your thinking? How do you approach your support as a business partner? I think it's great to use that term. Really underpins the nature of what HR is all about. How are you, the business partner, sitting on the shoulders of the line managers who you're enabling and supporting to do what they're meant to do?
So coming into this role, the business partner model was taken to move forward. And so part of that is I meet with all managers regularly and I talk to them about people and I talk to them about a whole host of issues and concerns or really positive things. But what I do is talk to those managers about how are we motivating, how are we making that individual feel that they're contributing to this organization. What do they want? What do they see themselves doing here? Because we have to recognize that some people come into an organization and are happy in what they do. What we can't do is think that everybody wants promotion, progression, they see themselves somewhere else. We need to motivate and reward everybody in terms of what they do. And we want to highlight and spot those people who want to move on. We want to highlight and celebrate those people who are doing a brilliant job, who are doing something and they want to stay in. So that rewarding motivators has got to be really tailored to the person, because there's nothing worse than sort of making an assumption of somebody. So the work I do with managers is we talk very much about the people in the team, how the team is formulated, what strengths, and also what do those individuals want. So I think the most important advice and the way I manage the business partner role is let's get to know everybody and have that manager really get to know their teams, because that's really, really important.
Yeah, as you say, teasing out the unique features of individuals, because in an interesting way, a bit as you were saying earlier about the notion of managers as clients. Actually, if one can put a conception on it, and I've tried to unpack this in the past, and there are pros and cons, but you could I remember one big consulting firm, they at one stage said, we're going to treat our employees as though they are our customers. Now, you've got to live up to that. But actually, getting managers to think that the people are not simply pieces on a chessboard that they're moving
Mm,
around, but
mm,
actually to say, all unique individuals with their own agendas. And to understand that is crucial then to making the right decisions. And therefore your role in getting alongside them to facilitate that understanding is really crucial. There's also the question that then arises where different managers adopt a particular view, and there's almost not exactly internal competition, but there may be one set of approaches which you get one manager doing, which are not necessarily consistent with what another does, which can be a source, particularly say in a unionized environment where
mhm,
that's going to be brought to the fore by representatives, but in any organization generally. So what is one of the ways in which you can bring some sort of regulation if I'm setting reward management, reflecting performance, understanding my people, that one can get, while on the one hand, the a tailored approach to individuals, but on the other, dealing with the necessary balance in terms of regulating the organization to be consistent and fair.
mm. That's great a point because it's been very much a part of the last 2 years of being here is to ensure that there is consistency. So yes, absolutely seeing people for individuals and understanding their worth and what they want to contribute, but also ensuring that, particularly around performance management, that we are being consistent as an organization. So how that's done is quite often through conversations with individual managers. I'm able to draw intelligence from everybody and say and talk to them about, well, this is what's going on over here, this is what's happening in this area of the organization, governance around the PDRs or all of the appraisals in terms of all the one-to-ones and any other schemes that we operate, because each manager is going to have a different view on what they think is appropriate, what they think is acceptable behavior and performance. And so it's drawing it all in and talking about we need to have this level of consistency. So we do have meetings as a management team and we talk about that very much. We've also, since I've been here, instigated a meeting with our executive team to talk about really ensuring that that governance takes place in terms of consistency, really a key theme coming from top down to say we want to manage, reward, motivate, performance manage all of our people, but we want to make sure we get it right. And we need to ensure that certain managers aren't going off on a tangent. We bring it all back together and ensure that there's a level of consistency.
Yeah, consistency. And that means, of course, being very credible as the business partner working alongside those individuals. They need to trust you, to trust your judgment in the advice they give. I remember many years ago somebody comparing and contrasting themselves. It was we used to call it industrial relations those days, but an employment relations setting. And somebody said, oh, this particular individual, his approach is that of the rugby pitch. Mine is of the world of the ballet stage. And sometimes maybe you've got to be very focused and challenging. Other times you can be very nimble on your feet. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, playing that important role as a strategic advisor, you have to be able to be very self-reflective and adapt to your circumstances.
You do, and quite often it's I'll talk to managers and say, I'm going to constructively challenge you now as if there is a challenge from an employee or anywhere else, and let's talk about having that measured decision in your approach. And I think that only comes with a trusted relationship. Otherwise, it is seen as criticism. And so I've managed I hope, to build up relationships over the last 2 years to enable me to do that and have really honest conversations. And actually, I think I do believe I do have honest conversations because when we meet as a group, those conversations are discussed and our managers relay those conversations as they have done to me. So I can sort of see that, yes, we're all having honest conversations, but you've you've touched a point there, Stephen, that trust is really, really important. So what we don't and what I haven't wanted to do is create an environment where it feels that the manager having a conversation with me immediately go and talk to perhaps their manager in terms of just how things are being done. So it's a really trusted relationship to know that actually it's just a safe space,
Mm,
creating a safe space, which is I think what's really important in HR to have conversations. And sometimes we get it wrong, sometimes things happen, but it's that safe environment for all of our managers to know that they can have those honest conversations.
mm. I mean, just listening to you speak, it makes one step back and think it's a tough job. You know,
Mm,
this is no easy ride. One needs, yes, I guess that may be the analogy of the the rugby pitch and the ballet platform. Isn't it's not so bad after all because we do have to move between those two. But
yeah,
as with both of those, whether it's the performer on the field or on the stage, one has got to be very skillful and. As you say, we don't always get it right. We can get injured. We have to
that's right.
recover.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what's really important is we need to enable the manager to own it because it's very easy to say, I've taken this action because HR advised me to take this action. But in reality, we need all of the managers to own the decisions that they make. HR, we absolutely have that hard task to talk about what could be and what's the right process, but it also needs to be owned. And I think that's really important a skill for any HR professional to be able to say, this is what I'm putting in place for you. It's your decision, but I'm giving you sound advice in terms of making the best decision that you can.
I think that's really profound. Thank you for sharing those reflections. So we've looked at where we've come from. We've looked at the now. We've looked at the nuances and the challenges. I guess we should not conclude without having a look into the future. It's dangerous, I know, to speculate. You've got no crystal ball, but based upon what you know from your experience and the signs, the trends that you can see, any thoughts that people should reflect on in terms of so where is reward management generally, as well as specifically in public services, headed as we go out into the future?
I think it is considering the ability to say, what is this total reward? I really think the focus needs to be away from base pay. It needs to be all of those things we can offer, and we just keep understanding what the organization or any organization needs. And it's understanding that strategic direction and saying, how do we create a workforce of the future? What will they want to see? We know that we have a number of things. We talk about AI, we talk about the agile working. What will the workplace look like, and what will people want to see in their package moving forward? And we know that a driver for motivation is not pay, that the people want to feel safe, they want to feel secure in their environment. We've moved from public service and sector of people staying in a role for a long, long time. So, when I joined local government, it was deemed to be a job for life. Once you got in, it was a job for life. And over the last few years, we've seen people come into public sector, move out, go back into private, come back again. So we really need to keep up with what do people want in the here and now. And like you say, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it really is important to understand and get out there and understand what people really want in the here and now, rather than thinking about what they wanted a few years ago.
Yeah. And very interesting that you've placed the focus on that concept of total reward. It's interesting because across these rewarding conversations, when I spoke with Duncan Brown, Duncan has become quite skeptical, he said, on this term because become a buzz phrase. It's been out there for a period of time. It was a little bit like back several decades ago now when people talk about cafeteria benefits, a solution in search of a problem, although we've come a long way in applying that, and that's part of total rewards. Then when I spoke to Jim Fickus, at World at Work, where indeed that total rewards concept was very much popularized. Jim obviously can still see that there is a place for it. And I think what you've done is
Mm.
now to ground it, to say, well, it depends how you look at it. It's about you. Don't just use the buzz phrase. Don't just accept it as something imposed. Use it as a mechanism, almost a portal through which to open a conversation with all the players. Yeah, I think that's a really powerful way of thinking about it. So we won't discard it just yet. It's it's got a future. It's part of the future. You talked about AI, and before we started this part of our conversation, we were reflecting a little bit on AI in the future. We've had big data. We've got people talking about the utilization of co-pilots and large language models. Um, Clearly, there's been always a large number crunching element underpinning reward management, looking at compa ratios and all those kinds of things. Is there a role in this future that you envisage for AI without losing the human touch? Because I think what you've emphasized is the crucial part of human beings here interacting, working out what they want, building trust. Is there a role where AI can facilitate the things that we have to do, maybe make them more efficient, but actually freeing up the space to create that trusted, safe space for the human beings to have their interaction around reward? What do you think?
I think so. I think there is a place for AI, certainly in supporting perhaps certain aspects of recruitment, certain application of policy, or drawing out information from contractual details. But I do not think you can replace the human element. I think what's so important, over years we've moved from personnel to human resources. Let's put the human in that role, and actually any application of policy can go many ways. This is the thing about HR. There's very rarely a policy that you read or a process that you manage that is explicit in the way it must go. There is some discretion, some application view. So I think there is a place, but I would like to hope, certainly for the next years that I'm still working in HR, that there is a need and desire and want for organizations to have HR people giving that HR view, advice, knowledge, intelligence, background information, which is really, really important for our managers making decisions and moving forward with the organization.
I mean, it's really encouraging that people in leadership roles like yours are using your agency in this way. Because at the end of the day, you can be swept along with the tide of events, or you can say, no, this is what I believe. I think we we live in a world of, I don't know, focus groups for everything, and people are going with the latest. We talked about buzz phrases and the like. But at the end of the day, it's about saying, what are my values? What do I know? And how can I work to those principles and use my agency? And I think that's the point that you're making so well. And it's interesting too, as you say, the way in which the function has evolved way back. I mean, people used to talk about the handmaiden function, didn't they? The welfare person that would come along, which in an interesting way put the emphasis on benefits, a different form of reward through then personnel management. Then suddenly it's HR, human resources, and that there's the hard edge side, there's the soft edge side. Well, which
Mm,
one dominates? Well, when we're cutting people in roles, unfortunately, it seems hard edge, but
mm,
people are demanding more of a soft edge. But actually, is it pejorative to think about people as resources, human resources? Hang on, what I think you've just said is whatever it is, it's about putting people at the center and having people leading the knowledge, working as business partners, facilitating conversations that remind people of what really counts and what at the end of the day is going to create the sort of outcomes that then one can defend and be proud of.
Absolutely, absolutely. I genuinely, from the time I've come into HR, it's been about the people. And you're right, the whole breadth of an employee life cycle in terms of, onboarding induction to the end, in terms of leaving an organization. What have we learned? What does that person tell us? How can we get better? What can we improve on? And we do have to make difficult decisions or support in difficult decisions, but also we can be there to celebrate and recognize and reward, which is really, really important.
Mm, Indeed, celebrate and recognize, as you say. It's not just trying to offer the carrot and avoid the stick, but it is more holistically to recognize the contribution people make, not just as individuals, but working together for the benefit of the organization and all the people that got a stake in it. If you were looking back then to the you are thinking about going into HR, and particularly if you were thinking about a focus on reward, what would be some of the tips? What would be the advice you'd give to people who aspire to go into that role now and into the future?
So I think the tips would be certainly don't take things personally, being a HR professional, because you don't always get the positives. Again, it's not always the positives, but you enable things to happen. In terms of reward, consider what the individual needs. What does the organization need? But let's not think that everybody needs the same thing. For some, it will be a simple thank you. And so you start reinforcing with managers, just remember to appreciate, give that positive appreciation, just say thank you. And then there will be other things. There will naturally be other processes, policies, reward schemes that may be appropriate. But I think the most important thing is never forget the person, and always try and drive that model around understanding the business, understanding the people from a HR professional, and then you can talk about that to the managers.
Yeah, great, great thoughts. Um, just before we wrap up, is there anything you think I might have asked you which I haven't done?
I don't think so. I think in terms of this conversation, it's been really interesting for me to actually reflect back on my time in HR and think about those rewarding motivators that are really important to people. And I think it's just reaffirmed to me the reason why I'm here, the reason why I do this role, and the understanding people and making people the heart of what we think about in human resources. So I think it's been really useful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. As I said at the outset, I know your schedule is very full. I really appreciate you making the time, and I've learned a great deal by having the conversation with you. So it's certainly been a rewarding experience, Claire. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.